Okay, welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm just going to open the meeting with a couple of notes. The first thing I want to talk to you about, if you haven't used Zoom before, Zoom is the software that we're using for the webinar. Zoom is designed to bring a large amount of people together, up to 25 people on screen. Which is why we like to use it for a number of different types of activities. But there are a couple of quirks in it because it's not really designed for big webinars. They're working on that, and we're hoping to be able to beta test their webinar software. So one of the quirks is that there's a button that's green and it says share screen. If you could please not click on that, that would be most helpful, because you will see your screen and it's hard to get out of it again. So try to avoid that. Another thing is that if you're on a Macintosh, Apple Macintosh, or if you're on a PC compatible machine, you'll be able to see what's called the gallery view, and that will show you everybody who is on the screen. The first 25 people basically who arrived at the meeting, it'll show you those people. What you do is you take your mouse, hover up in the right top hand corner of your screen, and click on gallery view. That doesn't work when we're sharing screens, and actually our screens are going to be shared for a good chunk of this because that lets us show you slides. The other important feature is called the group chat, and group chat is how we're going to ask you to communicate with myself and with Richard and with Nicole when you have questions or comments. You can use it to talk with each other as well during the presentation. When we did the webinar last week, there was a whole other conversation screen going on in the chat, which was very interesting. But after Nicole's presentation, or during, I'm not sure how she's going to do it, but she'll be taking questions. If you could type your questions in to the chat box, then Richard and I will be moderating that, and we will screen through those and pose the questions to Nicole for her to answer. If you are having trouble typing, just type in "want to talk" or something like that, and then we will attempt to bring you up on screen so that you can talk rather than type. You'll also notice that at random times you will be muted throughout the presentation. What I try and do is, if I hear dogs barking or people talking or things going on in the background, I find out who that is and I mute you. Because the problem is that everybody can hear you. It would be more helpful if during Nicole's talk, if you could actually mute your audio yourself, because then that will cut down on the background noise. We can literally hear everything that's going on at your end. So those are just sort of webinar etiquette. Future events. On November 12th, we will have Kate Swaffer, who is from Australia. And because she's coming in from Australia, the time of that event, of that webinar, will be later, 4 hours later in the day. But that means that she doesn't have to get up in the middle of the night to attend the webinar. She is a person living with the symptoms of dementia. She is an advocate, and she is the chair of the new Alzheimer's Australia Dementia Advisory Committee. On November 19th, we'll have Café Le Brain, which is the newly named online memory cafe. And on December 10th, we're pleased to welcome Judy Berry of Lakeview Ranch, who has a very innovative care model that she will be talking about that greatly reduces the use of psychotropic drugs with her residents. For a complete calendar of upcoming events, you can go to the minds-meeting.com website. So if you could just write down that URL, and you'll be getting an email after this event, probably tomorrow, and it'll have that link in there and a list of upcoming events and the link to register for Kate's webinar in a couple of weeks. Okay, donations. Even just $1 helps. We welcome any and all donations. If you feel like you received value from today, if you could even contribute $1, it all helps. Most people don't realize that we are completely unfunded other than your donations, and that there is no organization supporting us whatsoever. That's for the webinars, the online memory cafe, and for the support groups. And your dollars go to support all of those. They support the software costs. They support continued funding to develop new webinars and create more webinars, and funding to create training for support group facilitators. That's one of the things that we would like to do, and a number of other projects that Richard and I are cooking up. There's two ways to donate. One is at the minds-meeting.com website. And now when you register on Eventbrite, there is an option to buy a ticket via donation. And a few people have taken advantage of that easy way to donate, and they've donated everything from a couple of dollars up to a little bit more. And as I said, every dollar helps. So we thank you for that. And let's get on to the great part about today, which is our guest speaker, Nicole Batsch. And she is the co-author, along with Mary Mittelman, of the World Alzheimer Report 2012, which is entitled Overcoming the Stigma of Dementia. The World Alzheimer's Report is produced by Alzheimer's Disease International, which is based in London, England. And Nicole is actually coming to us today from London, as she is a PhD student at the King's College. King's College, London?
London. Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay, all right. She was, as part of that report, she was also the study author of a survey conducted with over 2,000 people with dementia and carers in a number of countries. And Nicole might be a PhD student, and she looks very young, but believe it or not, she has 16 years of experience developing numerous programs, aging and dementia programs across the U.S. And amongst her accomplishments are a literacy program for seniors, family care interventions, a hospital-based senior wellness center, dementia staff training for home care and care homes, and initiatives for people in the early stages of dementia living in the community. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Nicole.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Okay, the screen's just switched on me as well, so I just want to make sure. Hello, everybody. I can see everybody's faces now, and some familiar faces as well, so it's really nice to be here. Laura, I wrote a little note for myself. Did you want to record the session?
I am actually recording it now, but thank you. Yes, and I had that big note for myself on the agenda because, yeah, I get caught up and forget.
Sure, I got several emails from people who were saying that they couldn't make it and wanted to be able to watch it later. So
okay.
That's okay with me. If you want to record it, that's fine.
Okay.
But I really appreciate being here, and I'm enjoying watching the chat as well as people are saying good morning from wherever they are, because it's already evening here in London and it's dark outside because our time changed on Sunday. So our clocks fell back and now it's dark at 4 o'clock. Not so fun. But for the other people who are in the UK, you realize that you're sitting in the same spot I am right now, looking out the window to darkness. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about really the World Alzheimer's Report on stigma and to see have we really made any progress. And the first thing I want to say is really just that people with dementia are the real experts on stigma and their experiences. And I hope that there will be time after the talk. I've only planned for speaking for about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. That there will be time to hear from both people with dementia on the call, carers, other people who work in the field to really kind of have a discussion about have we made progress and where have we made progress and where do we still have work to go. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. That would be helpful, right?
Hi, Dina. Good morning.
This one.
Hey, and before Nicole starts, as she's preparing her slides, could I ask you to please mute your microphone? And that way it cuts down on the background noise. And to do that, you take your mouse and you hover it over the bottom left of your screen, and you'll see a little picture of a microphone come up. Click on that, and it will mute your microphone, and that will help to cut back on the background noise. All right, thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So have we made any progress on the stigma of dementia? When Laura asked me this question, there was really a lot to think about. These are just a couple of the questions that I thought about when she asked me this question. Have we made any progress? In what time frame are we measuring progress? I wasn't sure if Laura meant, hey, since the World Alzheimer's Report, have we made any progress? Or is this over time? Because there have been people working on stigma a little bit before the World Alzheimer's came out. And also, there's certainly a lot more work on stigma going on now. So during this talk, I'm going to try to answer some of these questions based on the information from the 2012 report, but also reflecting on my own experiences of the past year, and also bring in some historical context as well. I'll use some examples from around the world, but they're by no means representative or exhaustive examples. So today is really, I've just pulled together a snapshot about what I think is going on in stigma in society. However, if I had to give you an answer right away, what would that answer be to have we made any progress on stigma? And I'm guessing my answer won't surprise you. It's complicated. And it's complicated. While the 2012 report prompted a discussion about the issue of global stigma, so we could all talk about this in one forum, we still have a long way to go. And many discussions are still needed with people with dementia, with carers, with practitioners, with researchers, with government officials, all working together to find a solution. So I like that Laura asked me, have we made any progress? Because it's a collective we. We all need to be in this together to make some kind of impact for the lives of people who are coping with the symptoms of dementia. My answer is also it's complicated, not because of all of the unanswered questions about the timeline or measurement, but also because of the individual personal experiences. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. This photo was taken by me just 2 weeks ago at the Alzheimer Europe conference. And at the front of the room sits a panel of people with dementia speaking at the conference. Now, this is actually the first time I've seen 5 people with dementia speaking at one time at a conference, which was really exciting. It has been happening more frequently in the last couple of years or so that people with dementia are actively participating in speaking at conferences and helping plan those conferences as well. But it's also taken us years to get to this place where it's acceptable for somebody with dementia to speak at a conference. The other thing that's important with this photograph is that these audience members, and by the way, there are people standing on the sides that you can't see. There are people sitting on the floor that you can't see. So this was standing room only. There were so many people interested in listening to these courageous people speak that they couldn't even get in the room. So it's really a testament to where we are today, I think, and how much progress we've made with people with dementia speaking in public. But it has taken us years to get to this place. The other thing I was going to say was that this is an audience of all people like you and I who are all interested in the subject. So how do we then bring this out to the rest of society and make it impactful for other people? Okay. The other thing is, this is also progress in 2013. This is the story of Najina from Namibia, and some of you may have actually read this story. It was in a recent ADI newsletter, and I do encourage you to read that newsletter because I'm just going to give you a small sample of Najina's story. Najina was chained to a tree in her family's yard for 20 years because of her dementia symptoms and was released earlier this year. In this photo, she's cleaned and dressed and clearly an active part of her village now. But this is what Najina looked like before. Last year, the Alzheimer's organization in Namibia found out about Najina and wanted to help. They heard about her being chained to a tree, eating scraps for food, drinking water from a bowl on the ground. The village chained her because she was killing the goats and setting fires, which they assumed meant she was possessed and needed to be tied to a tree. But Barry, who you see in this photo on the upper right here, works for the Alzheimer's organization, and he thought, well, it's probably because she's hungry. You know, she's finding food and setting fires because she wants to cook her food. This is such a remarkable story because Najina now has a better quality of life, but also because the village chief, who also happens to be Najina's brother, by the way, has donated land so a dementia center could be open to help other people with dementia. Barry also reports that about 10 to 12 other people have been referred there since finding out there's now active services in this village available for people. My point in comparing these two stories is that the stigma of dementia is complex. All over the world, individuals and communities are challenged about how to deal with stigma, but both of these stories are stories of progress. Okay. And what about stigma in the developed world? Is it so different from developing countries? According to the World Alzheimer's Report, and many people who are on this call today, this is the predominant view of what people think about people with dementia. How do we change this? So in the World Alzheimer's Report, these are some of the results from the stigma survey. And as Laura had said in the introduction, there were over 2,000 participants. And the survey was conducted with caregivers, and with people with dementia. And there were over 157 people with dementia from around the world that participated. Overall, about people from 54 different countries also participated, whether they were carers or people with dementia. Nearly 60% of the carers and people with dementia think that people in general do not understand dementia. That's the first red bar you're looking at, the red and kind of peach bar on the left. They also said in the survey that while political leaders have more understanding than the general public, in their opinion, it's often due to either having a personal experience or it being an election year. And these were some of the, so not only did we ask these sort of quantitative questions, although we didn't design the survey as a quantitative survey. It was more, we were looking for qualitative information that we could include in the report, and then got so many results. And then we're surprised by the results. So, but that, for political leaders, in their opinion, it was often due to having a personal experience or it being election year. But survey participants also felt that the media understands dementia. So this bit about the media is a little hard to interpret, because while they said the media understands dementia, what they also said in the narratives that they wrote in was that that picture you just saw of two people in wheelchairs is the predominant view, is more of a late stage view, a negative view of people with dementia. So we can't say based on this survey that, oh yay, you know, the media understands dementia, because really ultimately when you look at the other results, the narrative results, they really don't, and we have a long way to go to changing the media and their influence over the rest of society. Now, these results aren't surprising to anyone on this call, I'm sure. What's important now is that we have a baseline for measuring results in the future. So for example, if this were something that we were to use, or other researchers used different questions in the future to kind of say, you know, where are we on stigma? We now have something to start with, and that we can measure possibly worldwide. And also note that these results are based on the experts of stigma. There have been other surveys done with professionals about stigma of dementia, and for me, I really want to know the experiences from the person with dementia's point of view and from the carer's point of view. They're the real experts here. And the only way we'll know if we've made progress is if the people who experience stigma report that there's been progress. I'm not the one to tell you whether there's been progress or not. So that's just another example. So how do we continue to change this stigma? These photos are of a day center run by family carers in Taiwan, supported by the Taiwanese Alzheimer's organization. As you can see, in contrast to the last photo, these people are engaged and supported to live a better quality of life than just sitting in wheelchairs and being ignored. The woman on the left is playing mahjong, and the man is writing Taiwanese calligraphy. Both of these activities help the person with dementia feel a part of their culture, as well as connected to other people who are sharing in these experiences with them. If we were to think about how else we can measure success, in addition to the media and public's perceptions, the World Alzheimer's Report also asked participants what else could be done to reduce stigma. And people pointed to more education about the disease and community involvement by people with dementia. Although many of these topics are being addressed currently and researched, it's still difficult to measure that impact. And I'll give you an example here. If education understanding were measured by website hits to Alzheimer's organizations, or people who attended educational sessions, we might call it a success, because no doubt there are probably millions of website hits to organizations like the US or Canada or Australia to their website. There are thousands of participants who take educational programs. But only people there's the dog barking we were talking about. but only people who need information seek it. And so what we're not reaching here is we're not reaching this translation to the general public who may interact with a person with dementia but not have any personal experience or feel like they have a need to learn more about dementia. So I'm going to give you an example of the photo on the right. Now I could ask you in the photo which person in this photo has dementia. And I bet everybody would have a hard time knowing who might have dementia. And it's actually a trick question because both of these people have dementia. And they're both public speakers for various Alzheimer's organizations. Linda's from Scotland on the left, and on the right is Maxine from Australia. And Maxine and I actually co-presented together at the Alzheimer's Disease International Conference in Taiwan. She shared a story at the time, and kind of giving you an example of this, how do we reach the public? Her story during the conference was about stigma, and her experience was in a grocery store where she was in line for the cashier, and she was trying to sort her change and trying to figure out, how much change she needed to pay her bill. And she could visibly see and hear the cashier getting impatient and frustrated. She could visibly see and hear the people in line behind her getting frustrated and impatient. And that's only going to make people like Maxine not want to go to the grocery store anymore. She's perfectly capable otherwise to go to the grocery store and buy her groceries and get what she needs, but she just needs a little bit of help and a little bit of patience and extra support in certain situations. So it's those people I'm talking about, those people in the community that may not have that personal experience, but need the opportunity to have the education about dementia so people can have a better quality of life. So stigma is currently being addressed by a variety of stakeholders around the world. A good example in addressing Maxine's issue in the grocery store is taking place with dementia-friendly communities. So I'm guessing a lot of people on this call might be familiar with the concept of dementia-friendly communities. It's really big here in the UK and in other places, and it seems to be the new buzzword in dementia these days. And I'm really happy it's taken off. And it's also being researched, but it's too new right now to see, is it actually going to make any impact? We hope it will, and we'll start to see that as we measure it more and more and see what happens. Other things to think about, on this list are improving dementia in the media or measuring. I've seen a lot of, at the Alzheimer Europe conference, for example, there was one presentation about how the media sees people with dementia, how movies have portrayed people with dementia over time. I think I've seen those at several conferences, people looking at that, and how negative it can be and how nursing home focused it can be. And although we don't want to discount the people who live in nursing homes, we need to be aware that people with dementia can live up to 20 years. And many of those years are quality years in the early stages, and we don't want to discount the later stages, but we don't want to discount the earlier stages either. So are we making any progress? The answer is yet to come. And it's also important to note that some of these things are overlapping. So some of the areas are being pushed forward by policies like national dementia strategies, of which I think there are, 16 countries now who have a national dementia strategy. And they're pushing forward things like dementia-friendly communities and other things in local countries that might make a difference to people. Okay. We'll come back to this it's complicated piece as well. So let's return to this. With all that's going on in dementia right now, I think we can all agree it's not enough and it's not fast enough. It almost seems like now we're all trying to throw a bunch of spaghetti noodles at a wall and see what sticks. Having said that, if we don't try new things, we won't know they work. So this is just a brief list of things that I thought about might be missing or new or maybe even somewhat controversial in the dementia field. While it's a wonderful opportunity for me to see all of these people with dementia speaking at conferences, I worry about the people we're not reaching. What about people in those hard to reach communities? What about people in rural communities? People who don't have access to the internet and these wonderful resources that Richard and Laura pulled together for people to be able to talk to each other online. A lot of people are not being reached by our services and by our our reducing stigma strategies. Although good things are also going on. So Laura was telling me, and I went to watch the theater project that you all had put together, and one of the gentlemen in the theater project said that he's actually started a Facebook group for people with dementia. And I think that's wonderful. We need to keep doing those things despite, we need to find other ways to reach the hard to reach audiences who can't participate in things like that. But so I put up here social networking as well, because it's definitely going to have an impact on reducing the stigma of dementia. Even myself, my own Facebook page, although I try to keep it separate from work, I do post some things because there are several people I know in my personal world who are also caring for aging parents or siblings or other things. So I try to post as much as I can about resources and things when I come across things that might be helpful. As for the controversial bits, so some of the people with dementia I've spoken to want to stay in the workforce as long as possible. And I'm guessing it's controversial from the workforce perspective. How do we keep somebody with dementia here when they're really, it's hard for them to do their job the way they used to. Their coworkers are trying to take on more responsibilities for them and support them. There's a lot of issues going on in the workplace right now. I would say the best place I've seen so far is Australia in trying to tackle the workplace issue. They've got some materials on their website in educating people with dementia, and employers are thinking about how do we reduce or how do we modify the things that we're doing so we can stay in the workforce longer? How do we modify the job? The other thing is with people with dementia speaking out. While I started this presentation highlighting the importance and value of people with dementia speaking out, it does come with a lot of preparation and support, and needs to be done in partnership with the person with dementia and their caregiver. So Richard and I co-authored some guidelines. So I hope you don't mind, I thiefed your picture, Richard, but I knew you'd be on the call. To kind of highlight and remind me to talk about the guidelines that you and I co-published together on the ADI website about speaking in public and the things that organizations need to think about when they invite somebody with dementia to speak in public. Not only is it logistically challenging for an organization, but they also need to support the person with dementia as best as possible to be as successful as possible. Because as in Richard's words, it's really challenging to get up there and, trying to speak in public, speaking out about a disease that is so stigmatized, and yet also thinking about, gosh, what happens if I forget a word or I forget my train of thought and I'm standing up here in front of a big audience, and how scary that must be. So we really need to be thinking about, when we're organizations out there helping people with dementia have those opportunities to speak, that we're doing it in an ethical way and in a way that supports the person with dementia to be successful. Okay, so I'd like to say the greatest benchmark in knowing whether we've made progress is this question. And this is a question that I'm going to pose to you so we can discuss this together as a group. What would the world look like when the stigma of dementia has been overcome? So what's our collective vision? And just as a starter, I've included a photo here from the Taiwan Memory Walk, which took place during the international conference earlier this year. And the gentleman towards the right of the sign is the same man from the calligraphy photo. And here he is again, being supported in the community to participate. So it's just kind of a way to string it all through, but to talk about what's the vision. So that's kind of the end of my talk, and thinking about those things. I'm going to put that question back up and pose it back to you guys again, but I just wanted to make sure that I said my thank yous to all the people who participated in that stigma survey and the results that we have, to Alzheimer's Disease International, who has been wonderful in getting the word out about stigma and prevalence, and all of the important work that they do. The Journey of Caring is their new report, and that's a must read as well on their website. So, and particularly to all the many people with dementia who I've had the pleasure to work with, including Richard and Maxine and other people that have inspired me over the years. So I'm going to put this question back up and throw it back out to the group to see if we can have a discussion about this.
Okay. Nicole, thank you so much. I have a couple of things. I wonder if before we go any further, if you could backtrack and answer two things, which is who or what is Alzheimer's Disease International for those not familiar, how they fit into the picture of all the organizations. And secondly, could you talk more about what a dementia-friendly community is and what that looks like? Because here in North America, most people are not familiar with that concept.
Okay. For the first question, Alzheimer's Disease International is the international body over all of the Alzheimer's associations and societies around the world. So I believe, and don't quote me on this one, but I believe it's up to 70 or so members of Alzheimer's Disease International. So the U.S. Alzheimer's Association, the Canadian Alzheimer's Association, Alzheimer's Society of the UK, Alzheimer's Australia, those are organizations that are all members of this international organization. And so the international organization helps to put forward global priorities that local associations can then adopt and push forward in their own countries.
Okay.
That's the answer on that one. For dementia-friendly communities, I can give a brief overview of it, but I wonder if there's actually someone else on the call who's more involved in dementia-friendly communities. So can I put the call out there to see if somebody else might?
Okay. I actually had a request from Michael to speak, and I'm not sure if he'll be speaking about dementia-friendly communities, but he definitely had something to say. Michael, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
First of all, I just wanted to comment on the benefits of that 2012 report. I think that was a very big eye-opener for many people around the world, including the Alzheimer's Association in conjunction with your report, because what it has done for people like us, it has opened up the doors for people to say, well, it sounds like there is a problem. What do we have to do about it? So I think that's the key takeaway from that report. And I think today, in many of the facilities that I deal with, government and other things, the key question comes out, well, what do we have to do to change that mindset? And I think now we're on the verge of trying to figure out how we do that and to educate the public. So I think while the report was really good, there's a long way to go. And far as trying to change people and educate people. But the good thing is we've at least got the people thinking that we have to change. So I think that's really good. In reference, what would we see in reference to people if we had the ultimate world where people could, I guess, live today in a world without the stigma and understand things? I would love to be able to go to an airport and say, hey, I need help to get from gate A to B without somebody coming with a wheelchair to give me a wheelchair to take me there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with me physically. I can get there. I just need somebody to guide me to get there. Another thing is we all have these cards, or many of us have these cards today that says, please, take care of this person or be a little bit more careful with this person because they hand out a card that say they have Alzheimer's. Well, the majority of the population just jumps back because they think you've got something contagious. They don't know what it means to have Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. So I think we need to do a lot more of an educational process, and I think we have a long way to go, but I think this year we've made a lot of progress, and I think we're going to continue to make progress. Now, I'm more than happy to speak about the dementia-friendly vision because I've actually been pushing that around the whole world. In fact, I'm actually dealing with the people in Waterloo, hopefully trying to make that happen. It's up to you if you want me to speak on that.
Sure. Why don't you start? Because I haven't had any other takers yet. If the Alzheimer's Society of Peterborough, if you can hear me, I know that you are doing some work in your area, and if you would like to speak to that after Michael, that would be wonderful. Oh, and Joyce would also like to speak. So sure, Michael, why don't you go, and then we'll hear from Joyce, and then hopefully the Alzheimer's Society of Peterborough will chime in after that. Is that okay, Nicole?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right, Michael, sure, go for it. Okay.
I've actually put together a vision that is really not my vision, but it's the people on this call and many other people, including ADI and the Alzheimer's Association and at least 15 other people who are living with dementia. And I've kind of now been sharing that around to all the high-level people around the world, prime ministers of health, and including the people here in the U.S., in Wisconsin, who is in the progress of creating a dementia-friendly vision. And everybody uses that word, but they use it loosely because nobody really understands what that really means. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I have the full vision of understanding it all, because there's so much more that needs to be understood. But I think at the very least, it means to me that we all have a better understanding of what it means for somebody like me to have this disease, that we are still capable of functioning. And that's probably the biggest takeaway that people need to understand. We're not somebody that's sitting in that chair, as you showed in that picture earlier, just standing there by the window. We're people who want to continue to function in the world if we're given the opportunity. And that's the key, to not make us feel ashamed when we are out there in public, that we have that difficulty trying to write that check, or to come up with the dollars or the change, to not make us feel this big because we're incapable of doing it. You know, there's so much more we can do. So I think there's a big educational process that has to happen, and that's just a very small part of it. I mean, it goes into basically the first responders to understand how to deal with us, because so many don't know how to deal with us. You know, they'll come at you to help you, and that's the wrong thing to do with somebody who has this disease. You want the person to invite you into that circle. Otherwise, we're going to feel threatened. So there's many things like that, and all other things related to the hospitals and how we're treated in the hospitals. But again, I think I've shared my vision with you, Nicole, and others there. If not, I'd be more than happy to share it with you. But I think that's that they're all trying to figure out today, what does dementia-friendly mean, especially in the U.S. We're just trying to finally, I guess, touch the tip of it. And I think it's going to take a lot of people, especially those who are living with the disease, to step up forward and say, this is what it means to me, and how we all have to work together so we can figure out what it works. Because I can tell you, if we're relying on the people who don't have the disease to make this goal happen, it won't happen, because they're only going to make a best guess effort of what they think it means. And I got to tell you, I think so many of them are wrong. We who are living with disease need to stand up and say, this is what we need, this is what has to happen, and this is how we can live our lives better. Only then will things change.
Thank you, Michael. Really, that was amazing. And I'll kind of reiterate a couple of the things that I do know about the dementia-friendly communities in the UK. And I'm getting to know it a little better, but I'm not directly involved. So that's why I put the call out there to see if there was anybody on the call who did know more than I did. It is an initiative by the Alzheimer Society here through local communities. And basically each of those local communities is getting together with all of their shops and banks and hospitals and different places where people with dementia might go, and doing the training to become model communities and how to care for people with dementia. The challenge currently now is to measure that progress, and is it really working if somebody makes a change to their business strategy, for example, if people with dementia are using that service, and how well is it working. So I think there's a next stage to go now. Right now the education is going on. So for example, with if the banks are around the table and a bank can tell whether somebody with dementia is taking out $5,000, $10,000 at a time, or pounds at a time, and that's not the previous behavior of that customer of that bank, then that bank, to be dementia friendly, might step in with the person with dementia and maybe their caregiver and say, oh, there's something going on here that we really need to be supportive with. So that's one example. Another example from my own research that's not based on dementia-friendly communities, but certainly could inform it. I just conducted a focus group with people with early-stage dementia for my work. And they, one of the ladies had a really hard time with, I want to say Marks and Spencer's because that's the stores we have here now, but in the States it would be a Macy's. So she's in the Macy's, and she's in the dressing room, and she's getting dressed, and it's one of those dressing rooms that has mirrors on all sides. So when she tried on her clothes and she went to find the door to get out of the dressing room, she couldn't find the door because it was all mirrors. Mm-hmm. And everybody else in the focus group went, oh, we've had that same experience. And this woman literally cried, and she had to cry and scream out until some storekeeper came and got her out of the dressing room because she couldn't find her way out of the dressing room. So as an example, in a dementia-friendly community, I would go to Macy's and say, you know, walk through the store as a person with dementia and find out where those challenges are so that somebody with dementia can still go shopping and have that experience of shopping and be able to go into the dressing room by themselves and dress themselves and do the things they still can do by themselves, but still find their way out. And that's one of the challenges. So that would be another example of what the dementia-friendly communities in the UK are trying to do. They're trying to work with local businesses that interact with people with dementia to make actual society more dementia-friendly.
Okay.
So.
In response to the call for people to talk about dementia-friendly communities from the audience, we have Joyce, who's going to come on in a couple of minutes to talk about that. But before Joyce comes on, I have a comment from, I believe it's Jessica at the Murray Alzheimer's Research and Education Program at the University of Waterloo. And she's not on webcam, so she typed in her response. And their definition of dementia-friendly communities is as follows: towns, cities, villages, or care settings that are now recognizing the need to make changes in the community to help better support people living with dementia to live well and fulfilling lives. They can do this by addressing issues such as housing, transportation, health and social services, civic participation and employment, buildings, parks, and other outdoor spaces, recreation, education, and the arts and culture available within that community setting. To build dementia-friendly communities, some of the building blocks include developing an informed society, enabling and creating supportive environments, and helping personal, social, and system connectedness. And they said that that's a broad definition.
Yep. Well said.
Well said. Excellent. Okay, Joyce, I'm just going to, are you on audio already, Joyce?
I hope so.
Yes, you are. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be a little narrower, perhaps, and a little more practical. I'm a geriatric consultant, and I work with nursing homes and assisted living communities. And even, although most of them are for-profit, even non-for-profits need to make a profit. So I actually come at this from a business standpoint to educate the communities I work with to make their name known within the communities. And in a very practical sense in the United States, you need to go to the Better Business Bureau. They need to have people talking with the Chamber of Commerce. We need to, whatever the business organizations are in any particular community. And I think for the most part, even small communities have something, some sort of organization to be involved with. From that, then we spread to the churches, to the service organizations, and I call them animal clubs, the elks, the moose, all of those organizations, certainly the VFW. Then I'm also suggesting that they start working with the children and educating children. For a while, I used to go into elementary schools as Grandma Joyce and help second and third graders understand what Alzheimer's is. And the name of my book was The Magic Tape Recorder. Luckily, all the books sold out because second graders don't know what a tape recorder is. Then going to junior high school and high school. So scout troops. So from my standpoint, when you're getting an organization or a company that I work for wanting to make a name for themselves, they actually are doing a great community service, but at the same time, they're marketing their name so that they are viewed in that particular community as Alzheimer's experts.
Great.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. I like your approach, Joyce, of how to where to start, because I think that trying to figure out the starting point is one of the issues people have. Everybody thinks, oh, dementia-friendly community, that's an amazing idea. As Jessica from MAYREP described in her narrative about dementia-friendly communities, it encompasses every aspect of community life, and that can be rather daunting when you're thinking about where to start. And I think that you gave us a good starting point, Joyce.
Thank you. And you know, from a town standpoint, oftentimes in the United States, you can go in and this is a eco-friendly town, or you know, they have those signs as welcome to, I live in Land O'Lakes, Florida, the home of blah, blah, blah. And so if you could get the town to really make a concerted effort to help educate and then continue it, so it's not just this one mad dash to help people understand dementia and how to be dementia friendly, but also to have it on a continuing basis. And then as you go into the store, there's a sign. So you'd have to have some sort of way to judge whether in fact Macy's, which you do have some dressing rooms that are for people with dementia that might be more confused than others, or maybe somebody who just doesn't want to see the rest of their body, which maybe is most of us.
Right. Somebody out there is either doing dishes or has a little dog barking. I don't know. We can hear you. Okay, that's better. Thank you. Lisa Snyder would like to make a comment relating back to stigma and community engagement. Lisa, are you there?
I think so. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Addressing this on two issues, and it's really nice to see Nicole and other friendly faces there on the webcam. We have a weekly outings program here for mild to moderate people with mild to moderate dementia. We're the Shiley Marcos Alzheimer's Research Center in San Diego, California. So on our weekly outings program, and they're out now, up to 18 people with dementia go out and they're engaged in lunch in a restaurant, and then they go to a docent-led activity in the community at a museum, a historical site, an ecological preserve. So they've been to over 90 destinations in San Diego. We know that the program is highly popular for the people with dementia, but what I've done a little bit more research on recently is the effect of this program on the docents who guide the persons with dementia and facilitate conversation at these various settings. And so just looking at dementia-friendly communities, in the pilot study that I did of 16 docents, prior to doing these tours of people with dementia, their perceptions of people with dementia, over 80% of them fell into categories related to disability. Their first associations would have been sad, depressed, lost, unable to communicate, negative associations, disability-based. After doing these tours, when we look at their associations of people with dementia, the first words that would come to their mind, over 80% of them were actually ability-based. This is the best tour I've ever conducted. People with dementia can communicate. They were so sweet. They're so grateful. Wow, they're so animated. They help each other. So what we're finding with this program is an idea that perhaps we can reduce stigma by getting persons with dementia out into the community, engaged in interesting activities at all the different destinations that anybody else would go to, because that affords people in the community the chance to see a group that's just like them. So there's no difference. There's no us and them. At many of the restaurants that we go to, we have restaurant owners now coming out literally to thank us for bringing this group to the restaurant because it's changed their minds about what it is to have dementia. Wow, if I get dementia, then maybe I'll have a program like this, or, you know, there was nothing like this when my mom had dementia. So I think more ways in which our citizens with dementia are out engaged in the community. We have a lot of in-house programs that are very meaningful, but more like this lovely image from Taiwan on the screen now, I think would help to reduce stigma as well. And then the second that I just want to put a plug for almost 20 years now, we've been publishing a newsletter for people with dementia. And this is a free quarterly newsletter that goes out to people around the world. And people with dementia write in their stories, their reflections, their comments. And that's been a beautiful way to see the reduction of stigma, just by having a forum for people with dementia to communicate and for other people to learn about their experiences as well. So that newsletter, again, it's entirely free. It's an e-newsletter. It's available by emailing me at lsnyder, LSNYDER, at ucsd.edu. So those are just 2 comments. Thank you for your time, for your presentation.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for coming on, for sharing those wonderful stories, because I completely agree with you. And in Chicago, there was a similar program called the Culture Bus that was running, but there was no research about the before and after of the docents. And that's really, I love hearing the research results of that, because that just makes me smile that the people out there are really changing their perception of what it's like to engage with somebody with dementia now.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be an interesting avenue to continue to explore, is what is the effect of people who do not have dementia when they're able to engage in these kinds of ways, and how do their stereotypes change, and what opportunities are we affording more people in our communities for these kinds of interactions?
Mm-hmm. 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 Jay Lander, who lives in Pennsylvania and participated in our first To Whom I May Concern project, and was also is a member of the DASNY organization. She raises a great point. She said, as Lisa was speaking, she said, what about all of us who are still in the community? People might not even know they are sitting in the movies next to a person with dementia. They might not always know that they are dealing with us. So we're talking about changing the perspectives, or changing the understanding of people in the communities. But I mean, other than wearing something that says I have dementia, in most cases you're not going to know until the person runs into an issue, such as, Jay, maybe you can't find your way out of the movie theater, or something. I don't know. So that's a different level. That's a bit of a confusing thought to me. How do we let people know? Do we want to know? It's almost like an invisible minority, because for people in the early stages or with younger onset, there's no visible, identifiable way of saying that this person has dementia, and we don't necessarily want that. Maybe, I don't know. Do we? So, Sue Stephen from Victoria, she has PCA, which affects her visually, for the most part. And when we're getting down to this kind of level of detail, this is just something for people to keep in mind, because it's really no effort for everybody, and that's to make text in plain print in notices. Larger, plain print, don't get fancy. And you can help people who have whose vision is affected by Alzheimer's disease to better understand signage and notices. Yeah, Lisa, is there a link for your newsletter that I can post on our website as well?
I should be able to get that to you. The newsletter is posted on our website, and you can Google Shiley Marcos Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. That's kind of a mouthful, but I will certainly give it to you to post it on your website, so people can read it either on our website, or they can get it directly into their email by subscribing and sending an email to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Lisa, if you type your email into the chat box, people will be able to see it there as well.
Right, which she did. So that's great.
She did? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see it yet.
We have another comment specifically about the department stores. They could paint or change the color of the door inside the dressing room. Small change that could make a big difference. That means targeting city planners and community planners, even those who are in master's program for this type. To better educate the architects and interior designers, and I believe there is a movement to do that, a movement afoot to do that. Richard, you're nodding. Do you know more about that?
I can't remember the name of the woman who's leading it, but she's a city planner, and I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. Yeah,
I read something recently, but yeah, Nicole, are you familiar
with?
Well, it might even have been Natalie Yates Bolton who spoke, because she's in the International Dementia Design Network.
Bingo.
In England, of course. A lot of the cool things are happening in the UK, yes. And she did speak to that. I mean, her mandate has grown exponentially over specifically design and architecture, but I believe there is work there.
And there are some great, there's some great literature out of Stirling University in Scotland. So if you go to the Stirling University website on dementia, there are books, all kinds of books on architecture and design that you can buy.
Right.
And they don't seem too expensive, £20 here or there.
Okay.
I have a few things I'd like to say, Laura.
Yep, please do.
I think one of the things we need to do to address stigmas is to agree on labels for them. We talk about stigmas as if everybody knows what they are. I think everybody feels them, but I'm not sure that everybody understands them. What is it? What's the stigma that makes people think we can't read? What's behind that? Well, they think we're getting stupid, and we know that dementia does not significantly affect people's intelligence. That's a stigma. Because I think it would help people with dementia to be more articulate about their stigma, about the stigmas they feel. And I think we could do a service if we would begin to talk about these. If we just had 3 of them, we could constantly repeat to people. You're not half full. You're not dying. You're not fading away. This is not a death sentence to you. And then I think we should start to help people put them in some sort of a hierarchy. What are some of the really big stigmas that produce lots of negative perceptions about us and feelings within ourselves? Because we talk about stigmas like everybody knows what they are, and everybody knows the feeling of being stigmatized, but I'm not sure that everybody with dementia understands what the stigmas are. They just know that people aren't giving them the respect that they would like or are not meeting their needs.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. Certainly if people who are experiencing the stigma might not realize that other people in society may not realize that their actions are in fact a stigma, they're portraying a stigma towards the person with dementia. In the To Whom I May Concern videos in the play scripts, a couple of examples of the ways that people with dementia experience stigma, I would say, are people assuming that if somebody's having trouble looking for the word or finishing a sentence, somebody else will finish it for them. Now, that's based on a belief. A stigma is really based on a belief, which may also be based on a value, that the person with dementia can't speak. And stigmas eventually become disabling. Nicole, you spoke about Maxine's story that if she started to feel uncomfortable in the stores, so she's experiencing a stigma. She's experiencing somebody's belief that this person is being slow and is old and slow, and she may become isolated because of that, which could further impact her symptoms. I guess before one can start to fight the stigmas, one has to understand how those stigmas are experienced by people with dementia.
Well, but I think what Richard's saying is different than the experiences, because the experiences we have in the World Alzheimer's Report, and that's, the number one experience that we reported on was the loss of friends and people pulling away from people with dementia. But that doesn't get to what Richard's saying about why is it those friends are pulling away? What is it so fearful? And might it be for those friends, which would be another follow-up question, might it be the fearfulness of them getting dementia as well, of their own future? So that might be one cause or one reason for stigma. But the outcome of that stigma is the loss of friends.
Right. So the stigma in that case would be the belief that you can catch the disease, or the uncomfortableness that is felt by the person who doesn't know how to converse anymore with their friend. You know what I'm getting at? It's the stigma. You kind of almost have to keep digging and digging to figure out what is that underlying belief that's behind the behavior that is exhibited by the other person towards the person with dementia. It's very complicated, as you said on your first slide, definitely.
We are stigmatized because we're associated with death in a very public way.
Oh, good point.
Nobody wants to be close to death, if it's a loved one that you know, or even just going in a funeral parlor and looking at a dead body of someone that you hardly even knew. And this emphasis on everyone's going to die who has dementia, it just reinforces that kind of a stigma. It reminds people that we have a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And in effect, everybody has a death sentence. Everybody's going to die who doesn't have dementia.
Right.
And that's what I mean about getting that down to the core of these things. And if we could come up with half a dozen of them, like they have the 10 signs of what it's like, the warning signs of what it's like to have dementia, I think that would open up more conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Phil from Colorado says that he is a docent facilitator for specific exhibits at a local museum of nature and science. It is a wonderful and enabling experience. Nobody knows I have dementia except me.
Mm.
So, Phil, I want to ask you, what do you think would change if they did know that you had dementia? And you can take a minute to think about that because you're probably typing in. I don't know if you have a microphone. Nicole, where would you like to move to after this discussion? Uh-oh, am I frozen? Hello, everybody? Oh, that might be the end of it. No, you're there? Oh, phew. Okay, we froze there for a minute.
It's still alive.
Nicole, where do you think we can move to with the
for a
conversation?
while, so I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask Phil, what do you think would change for him if he knew that he had dementia? And he can take a second to respond to that. But Nicole, do you want to try and address your slide again? I think our topic is, our discussion has been all over the place. Or where would you like to take the discussion from here?
Well, I think the last question was very important when, and I'm sorry, I'm looking back up from Phil, who talks about being a docent. And if we have a vision, would that vision be the people with dementia you don't notice their symptoms, or they're just so accepted in society that that he can be a docent and not tell anybody, and it really doesn't matter.
Right.
But for people who need to tell people they have symptoms, or for people to just slow down for anybody with a disability, regardless of whether it's dementia or not, how do we make that happen where society is more accepting of any human being, regardless of who it is? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very valuable for the people who are on the call, like Jay and like Phil, who say they have dementia but nobody notices. And isn't that a nice thing too? It's like your disease is not who you are, and you can still enjoy your life at this stage of where you are, and enjoy that time.
I have heard stories, though, of people with dementia who are more upfront with their diagnosis, not being allowed to volunteer at organizations or being forced to withdraw from volunteering because they've been diagnosed. And that's a case of stigma in action, I think.
Yeah. And that's a real shame. I'm sorry to hear that, because I actually was involved in a project when I was in Illinois to work with some of the senior voluntary organizations and help them understand dementia, as well as how to incorporate people with dementia in kind of like what Australia, I actually stole the materials from Australia, and how to incorporate somebody with dementia and think about the job duties and what might be useful for that person so they can still be useful to your organization. They may not be able to do the same job they used to do, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a job for them. Mm-hmm. And so I think that takes the person, and again, this because of the stigma, it's hard for the person then to not feel badly and internalize and say, okay, I'm just going to shut my doors and not do anything about this. if I were that person, I would go to the local Alzheimer's organization, whoever it is in their community, and ask for their help and say, I want to volunteer, but, can you help me train this organization I want to volunteer in? Or can I volunteer with you? Or can you find a place for me to volunteer? Mm-hmm. So starting voluntary programs for people with dementia, I think, is a huge benefit. I worked with several people who were volunteering in food banks. And for a while, the person I was working with dementia didn't tell the food bank that she was having trouble, but the other volunteers could start to notice that she was having challenges. But she recognized what her strengths were and said, and I think her strengths at the time were sorting the cans. And she could sort the tins or the cans in one area, but she couldn't do something else. And so she had to be honest and say, well, I can't do that anymore, but I can do this. And really understanding what your strengths are and pointing to the person's strengths. Mm-hmm. 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 But it does take someone who's proactive and doesn't have, doesn't feel let down, although, they have every right to feel let down by these organizations who kick them out and say, no, we don't want you. Mm-hmm. But the organization needs the education and the tips and tools on how to modify the situation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Just as you were talking, I thought it would be helpful if in caregiver training from the Alzheimer's Society or Alzheimer's Association talked specifically about how to enable the person that they are partners in caring with, the person with dementia, and to talk about what they are still capable of doing. In my experience of facilitating a caregiver support group, quite often it's the opposite. It's they can't do anything anymore, so I have to keep taking over. And it's even more insidious than that. It's just this general assumption that they can't do anything, therefore they should just watch TV all day. Or, so I've heard about like a wife who's still trying to do the laundry and the husband just takes over instead of finding ways to help because he thinks that she can't do it anymore. And it ain't, I think it starts to somehow speed the progression of the disease because the person starts to feel powerless and have less purpose. With my thoughts. We had a question, Nicole. What about the specific stigma for those with younger onset? Are you able to address that? Have you had experience talking to people with younger onset and the stigmas that they have experienced?
Within the World Alzheimer's Report, we did have feedback, and I think it was about 50-50 of the people who are over 65 and under 65 who participated, or maybe it was a little higher of younger onset in the Stigma report. But I don't think I categorized it separately. Certainly, just off the top of my head, which is what will come as no surprise to people on this call, is the people who are facing stigmas are mostly in the workplace, because these are people who were in the workplace when they noticed their symptoms and then could no longer work. And I think that's the biggest one that I've heard from people with younger onset in my experience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.